and welcome to your real estate journey. Expert tips for buyers and sellers. I am Dolly Lopez, your realtor, broker in the state of Florida and Kentucky. Today, I am joined by one of my favorite real estate attorneys, Leslie. How are you, Leslie? Welcome.
Hi, I'm very happy to join you. It's been a couple days that I wasn't around, but I'm back.
I'm glad you're back. So today we're going to try to make it short and sweet, but we want to talk about the importance of a lien search. Why is it important? What we need to look for? What do you guys as closing attorneys look for? And why is it important to have one? I already said that. But anyways, so Leslie, what is a lien search review? What is a lien search?
A lien search is a search that you got to do in the county or the municipal city where the property is located so that you find anything that may be tied up with the property before you get to the closing table. And you avoid any kind of, unfortunate surprises for fees that you were not accounting for related to debts that are, tied up with the property. I have an example that we can show as to what kinds of items we look for in any and all lien searches that we do before the closing so that we know where we stand before we actually sit to the closing table, right? So the first item that we take a look and that we need to know is whether or not the taxes on the property for the year that it's being closed has been paid, or the year before, if let's say like now we are on April, so still, there's a little bit of time for people to pay taxes from past year, right? But after the April deadline, we must, make sure that taxes were paid on the property, because if they weren't, it's not a problem, but we need to make sure that we collect that amount at closing so that at closing, the seller is still responsible to pay off that debt and it doesn't pass on to the buyer. Because if we don't send that payment at closing, the buyer is going to be held responsible and then it's going to be on his, on his shoulder, on her shoulder thereafter.
It would be the responsibility. Now, let me ask, this lien search summary report, is it something that you guys just keep in the back office, or is this something that you sent to the buyer for them to be aware of it as well? And is there any loss around it?
Well, the way we do it in our office, we hire a company that dedicates, its time only to do the searches on the properties, and they are experts on the matter, and they have been doing lien searches for years and years and years, so they know where to look, what to look for, and how to attach every single evidence. That, do you see the check marks on the right?
Yes, I do.
Right? That tells me whether or not there is an issue with the related item, right? And the company will send us evidence that in fact there is no problem, right? So see, we're gonna get an actual copy of the pay invoice that reflects and supports the fact that this item number one here is, there's not a problem, that you don't need to worry about that item, right? And then you keep looking onto the next item, and they also have great connections. The company that we use have great connections with the city, and they get the responses from the city way faster than anybody else. Like, let's say here, the search number 2 will be to know whether or not the previous owner or any tenant that the owner may have had in the past has any outstanding balance with the water and sewer company. Why is this important? Well, because if it doesn't get paid at closing, guess who's going to be responsible after the closing date? The buyer, the new owner. And you can just go to the city and say, I'm sorry, it wasn't me. They're going to tell you, we are sorry. You should have made sure that was paid from the seller proceeds. If the seller didn't want to pay it before closing, that's fine, but you needed to make sure that the funds were retained and then used to pay off that amount, that balance, so that they won't be passed on to your account. And it's not that it will be passed onto your account because water and sewer has like an individual account with names and social, but it's still tied up with the property. So it's a problem that is going to be around your property that you don't want to have in reality.
And actually, I remember seeing a couple of closings with you guys where you guys held whole money from the seller
Yes,
to
correct.
get those bills paid. Now, is this a report that can be passed on to the buyer whenever they are purchasing the property?
It's not only that can be passed on to the buyer, it's the buyer's responsibility to review it, make sure he understands what the report states, what needs to be done. Of course, if you have hired an attorney that is doing the title for the buyer, that the attorney is gonna handle it for you. But if the responsibility is ultimately on the buyer to take a look and make sure, that everything is being clear for the closing. And then in our case, for example, it's very common, it's very regular that we withhold money in escrow to make sure that if any of the outstanding debts are not paid, then we use the money that we held, and then we clear completely any kind of liens that may be associated with the property. Now, if you see there are several items that may be included, like if waste is an item, then we need to know whether or not there's a balance. If there's a special assessment on the city, if you are in a city where there are new assessments, tax assessment, something new that we need to know whether or not this will be passed on at closing or not. You need to know, you need to be aware, right? The most important one is the open and expired permit, which is the item number one. Well, the second most important, I would say the most important is the tax one for me as an attorney, because it can actually end up in foreclosure of your home if it doesn't get paid consecutively. And then the second most important is the open or expired permits. Why? Because they're not gonna die just because you keep selling on the property. Somebody needs to take care of the permits and make sure if they're open because there is a reason for the permit to exist and the services are being received, or if it's already done, that somebody goes and close the permits. You don't want to be in a situation where your insurance company raises the quote on you because you have an open permit, let's say on a gate that has an open permit that it hasn't been completed, and in fact it was already done, the survey was already finished, and it's all okay, and the problem is that the contractor forgot or you didn't follow up on it or whatever happened, but you want to make sure that that's closed prior to you becoming the new owner of the property.
Gotcha. And some buyers, I would have to add that some buyers do purchase property with permits being opened.
Yes.
And I would say that's okay as long as it was a good negotiation. You have lowered the price, because ultimately you will need to fix this opened permit or unpermitted work that you might have had.
Listen, everything is negotiable in real estate. It's completely okay if you want to buy the property that has open and expired permit. That's completely okay. But it's your decision to make, and you need to be aware that the property that you're getting into, it's actually one that has open or expired permit, or it has nothing open or expired and it's everything okay. It's the decision that you need to make, and that right, nobody should take it away, right? Because it's your decision whether or not you want to continue or you want to stop. And that's why in the contract you should always have language that allows for you to get out of the contract if the seller doesn't comply with closing and paying for the closure of open or expired permits. And it works the same with any kind of building code violation or code enforcement. And I wanted to touch a little bit here in item number 7, which is the last one, code enforcement. What are these for? For example, in this case, the owners of the property had 2 dogs. And in Miami-Dade County, you have to have your dog vaccinated. It has to have paperwork, and you have to renew every time that it needs to be renewed. You need to keep updated on your system. And if you don't, guess what? The city is going to tie up the tag of your dog with the property that your owner. And then you want to make sure that the seller closes onto that. It doesn't transfer to your problem as a buyer, but it's still linked to your property somehow. And you just don't want that, because let's say in the future, 10 years, 20 years from now, you want to sell the property. You don't want to have that code enforcement violation drag on many years, accumulating interest. And then you are at a point where you no longer know where the seller, when you bought the property, is, or how to get a hold of him, or how to fix this. And then you're going to be in a situation where you have to, out of your own pocket, pay it so that you can actually sell the property in the future. So you don't want to be in that situation, because it's not your fault. It's not on you. It's on the seller to fix it. And you are going to give him notice of everything that, that came up in the search, in the lien search.
Awesome. Leslie, thank you so much. I've always looked into the lien title search, and I'm always looking at the little details and if there's any issues. And I love seeing when I have the report, like the summary page, like you're showing, and then everything that follows, just to make sure everything is in order. And that's something that every realtor should look for if they haven't given it to you. As far as the title company, if they haven't given it to you, that your realtor should follow up on that. But you definitely want to make sure that the lien search it's done properly, because at the end of the day, whenever the property gets transferred to you, most of the things might not fall off.
Right.
So you be either aware or taking care of it.
You want to make sure that the lien search is done with sufficient amount of time before the closing date. Because what if you find a lot of issue with the property that is going to prolong the actual time for the closing? You want to be with sufficient time to be able to give that seller, the opportunity to fix it and make it happen for you, still with the projected closing date, because you have a lender, you have a lock rate, you have a lot of things moving on, and you don't want this little thing to keep you from actually obtaining this home.
Awesome. Leslie, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy our conversation about lien search reviews and why is it important and what to look for. Remember to subscribe to our channel, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We got it all. So once again, thank you for tuning in to your real estate journey, expert tips for buyers and sellers. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye.